Hello everybody, I'm Matt Williamson and you're watching Pop Goes the 60s. Now today I'm going to do something outside of the 60s. We're going to look at the 70s. My record collection does span beyond the 60s, and in search of a lighthearted topic to end the year, I did something like this last year when I brought out all my 70s posters. So I'll put a link at the end of this video in case you hadn't seen that one. And earlier in the year I went through my 60s record collection. So I thought this might be a nice time to bring out the 70s stuff. And I have a couple pieces of memorabilia here. The Miller High Life, the champagne of bottled beers, some other things here to just get me in the mood. So let's get started. So I have these, I'll do this alphabetically with the exception of this first section, which will be mostly, well, you'll see. So I am from the Sesame Street generation. And this album came out in 1970, the first Sesame Street album, and this was an excellent record. And they never came out with anything ever as good again. And this is one my mom got for me and my sisters, and we just played it to death and really wore it out. And I've since tried to upgrade. They had the original gatefold, which is, it had a booklet, I think, with it. And then it was reissued under several different covers. And then finally, later in 1970, it might have been early 71, Sesame Street 2 came out. This also came out in a couple of different covers. I've since gotten rid of some of them, but this is also a gatefold with booklet. And there was also, and this was on, I think, Warner Brothers, before they started their own Sesame Street label. There was another album in 71, this was Susan's Sesame Street. So this is one that I really liked as well. So if you grew up in that time, chances are you had some of these albums. Then by late 70s, when they had their Sesame Street record label, both albums 1 and 2 got compiled into Sesame Street Gold. So this is the best of Sesame Street. So, and they kept issuing albums, I mean, to this day really. But you had some interesting ones like Roosevelt Franklin. You had different characters getting their own albums. C is for Cookie, Grover Sings the Blues, all kinds of stuff. Then you had, jumping on the bandwagons here. So a lot of fun stuff. And then eventually, when prime time, we had the Muppet Show on Wednesday evenings, I believe, and the Muppet Movie, and then even holiday stuff. This John Denver one was a big seller. This is one we had on 8-track. So yeah, all that kids stuff. In my era, there was all kinds of programming, all kinds of records. You had all the Mr. Rogers stuff come out as well. These are all from my childhood, actually. Captain Kangaroo, Zoom. So it was really a golden time, and it was education. This was a way they thought they were educating people via TV. So that's debatable how much it happened or how much education took place. But let's move over to something a little more fun and party atmosphere like, and that is K-tel. Now the K-tel company started it was the late 60s, and they did all kinds of different products, but what they really hit upon was these compilations of hits of the day. So this one, I don't know when the first one came out. I don't think I have it. This is 1973. So typically this one has 20 tracks on the record. And just to give you an example of who's on here, Frida Payne, Band of Gold, The Shy-Lights, Isaac Hayes, theme from Shaft, Timmy Thomas, Jerry Butler, Main Ingredient, Joe Tex, James Brown. So you had all these kind of party records, and people would bring these to parties, and you throw them on, and you have music for about, well, good 45 minutes or so without breaking a sweat or without flipping it over. Here's another one, Mindbender, 22 original hits of the Stars. So you had even more tracks on here. I suppose the more tracks you put on the record, the quality dropped a bit, but when you're dancing, who cares? Music Express, 20 original hits. K-tel Powerhouse as advertised on TV. Here's one of my favorite covers. This has got the robot from Lost in Space that was making the rounds like on all these TV shows in the 70s. So it made the cover of this K-tel album. So then something happened in about 1976, and they really went disco. So this is a disco instructional record, which is really funny if you listen to it. So this is a K-tel original, And then they had, so Disco Fire, this is a 2-record set, all original hits and stars. So they must have been making a little bit of money because these were, if I can get it open here, and I can't. These were nice lavish gatefolds, less tracks per disc, so the quality was better, and they started to segue some of the songs and crossfade them into one another. Kind of cool, kind of DJ-like. Here's another 2-record set, the Hot Ones. So an example of who's on this one is If I Can't Have You by Yvonne Ailman, Imaginary Lover, Atlanta Rhythm Section, We Just Disagree, Dave Mason, Barry White, It's Ecstasy When You Lay Down Next to Me, Thunder Island, Jay Ferguson. So quite a mix. And then you had some of these love song type compilations. Paul Davis, I Go Crazy. This One's For You by Barry Manilow. Don't Give Up on Us, David Soul. You get the idea. Get Closer, Seals and Crofts. Hot Nights and City Lights. So the best disco in town, non-stop original disco hits and stars. Like the likes of Sister Sledge, The Village People, Bionic Boomy, Amy Stewart, Blondie, Gloria Gaynor. And here we've got some more love hits here together. So anyway, when I was growing up, I had a couple of these, but these I picked up as I started throwing 70s parties in the very early 90s. These were a good way for me to quickly get a lot of songs of the day, a lot of hit songs. Here's another double album, Gold Rush 79, High Energy, this is another 79 album. So it went into the early 80s pretty strong. More Disco Nights, Wings of Sound, this is a single disc. And then we've got this one I picked up. This is a K-tel, more of a bigger version of what we saw earlier of a dance instructional. This is a box set. So this has the book of all the famous steps, Skater's Swivel, Skater's Switch, the Whip, you know, of course, the Hustle, all the stuff you'd want. And if you don't think that if you think the constructor may not be good enough, it's actually by Denny Terrio from Saturday Night Fever, or for, yeah, TV's Dance Fever, the man who taught John Travolta how to dance. So you can rest assured that you are getting quality instruction. So here's some more K-tel. This was a sampler that they used to play in the record stores, I believe, and this back folded out so it could stand up like a photograph or a picture. So that was so popular. You had other competitors come in, like Ronco. You probably remember that company. They also did things other than music and records. But Ronco got into the music business, Star Tracking 76, 20 original hits. Very similar. Looks similar to a K-tel design. All the hits you would think. You got Allman Brothers Band here, Eddie Kendricks, Marshall Tucker, Jackson 5, The Temptations, Barry Manilow. Ronco presents Far Out. 20 original hits. And here this is not Ronco, but this is basically a blaxploitation motion picture songs that it's kind of a rip-off. So you got the Superfly and Shaft and stuff like that on here. Couldn't pass that one up. This one, another Star Time, another Ronco. Oh yeah, so Ronco also did Mr. Microphone. Remember that little gadget? The TV commercial, hey, good looking, be back later to pick you up. We got Don Cornelius, Soul Train. So some fun compilations back in the day if you wanted to throw something on for a party. Here are a couple more instructional ones. Disco was so huge. You have multiple Do the Hustle instructional records here. Learn to Hustle, Discopedia Volume 1, Disco Party. And for those of you who are maybe a little older, you've got Belly Dancer Favorites. This is from 1973. Gus Valley and his orchestra. So those are some fun ones that I don't play them much, but when we were younger, I mean, it was hard to find a household that didn't have at least one K-tel compilation. All right, so let's go to, what was I going to do here next? Let's grab this pile here. Okay, so this next batch is going to be more television personalities, comedians, and the like. Did I want to do this one first? I guess I do. Okay, so we're going to start with this. So here we have original Hawaii Five-0 TV soundtrack. Great show, still to this day one of my favorite shows, especially from that decade. And this is just incidental music they used within the show. Here we've got zingers from the Hollywood Squares. So there were, in the 70s, I remember you hear about these lines for gasoline, and you know things were tough in the early 70s, but there was so much consumption of pop culture items like this. It's like everybody had an album. So even Hollywood Squares got on vinyl. Here we have the first of, I think, 4 Brady Bunch albums. So this was a Christmas album. I think this is 1970 or 71. Not very good. I bought this at rummage sale. This is the first Brady Bunch album I found. And in those days, you know, in the pre-internet days, they were hard to come by. This is the second album, which is kind of the hit album. I actually had this signed by Barry Williams, Greg Brady, who was doing a speaking tour once to, I think, promote his book. So this has got, what has it got on it? The Time to Change. That's the song I'm thinking of. Brady Bunch also had a cartoon on Saturday mornings at some point. I assume this is the record that went with that. And this has Keep On, and It's a Sunshine Day. There was another album which I don't have, but this album also came out, and I was told that the 2 biggest fan mail receivers were Maureen McCormick and Christopher Knight. So what do? You stick them on an album together, I guess. Not very good. A little bit more substance here with Linda Carter. So Linda Carter, she was actually quite talented. She could sing. She does sing on a couple episodes of Wonder Woman. And this, I think, is her first album. And this is the famous photo that wound up on a poster. So Linda Carter. A little sip here. Speaking of Cheryl Ladd, we've got Cheryl Ladd here. Cheryl Ladd had been a singer, and she's actually on the soundtrack of the original Josie and the Pussycats, that early 70s cartoon. There was an album for that as well, which I do not have. It's a tough one to get, kind of expensive. She sang on that album, and then when Charlie's Angels hit big and she joined the crew there, she started releasing a couple records. Here's the second one with the cowboy boots, kind of like that. And, you know, it helps if you're good looking, you know, you get an album deal. Barry Benton would be another one. Hugh Hefner's main squeeze for so long, and they never married, I don't think, but so she was on Hee Haw, and she did several albums. I believe this is a country album. This is 74, and then she did a series of albums, got a little more disco-y as time went on. Here's case in point. This is 1976, and these are on the, I didn't show the back of this one. She's showing a little leg here, a little extra cleavage. Good old Barbie. But this was on the Playboy label. They had their own record label. And why not? Okay, shifting gears slightly here, we go to Evel Knievel. Now, I've never opened this. This is sealed. And I'm tempted to look at that full color autograph photo inside, but not that tempted. So the songs on here are, oh, Why, lyrics by Evel Knievel. Side 2, Ballad of Evel Knievel. So Evel Knievel talks with kids. So yeah, maybe someday I'll open that up. Here we got the Fonz. This is an album where he doesn't sing. In fact, it says here, no, the Fonz has not taken to singing on this album. Better, he has chosen favorite 50s records to share with you. So I guess that was supposed to be a positive thing, that Henry Winkler is not singing, I guess. I wish Charo didn't do much singing. She wasn't much of a singer. This album cover, there was a pretty big promotion for this. There was a single called Coochie Coochie, did not chart. There was a poster that came out with this similar pose that emphasized the t-shirt a little bit more. And she may have had other records, but this is the only one I've picked up. Okay, this is Christy and Jimmy McNichol. Yeah, I don't remember what Jimmy McNichol ever did. I suppose they tried to make him into a star, but Christy McNichol did all right. And there's a poster in here. And there they are in their athletic Workout apparel. Never listened to this one. Maybe someday. I'll have to be pretty darn bored. The Odd Couple, Tony Randall and Jack Klugman. So this is kind of a lavish gatefold, glossy cover. You know, You're So Vain is on here. The Inchworm. You know, I don't know. Funny stuff. I do like The Odd Couple. And here we've got Telly Savalas, Kojak. So Telly Savalas, I think, had at least 3 albums in the 70s, and he did actually do some singing on the TV show. He wasn't singing on stage or with a microphone, but some of the background music he lent his voice to. So he had a decent voice, and his brother, who was also on the show, also did a little bit of singing. Usually some Greek-style ballads. Oh, okay, James Brolin. So James Brolin he was on Marcus Welby, Dr. Keeley. Stephen Kylie? I can't remember. Yeah, he was the beefcake. Goldie Hawn. So Goldie, late of Laugh-In, she had an album or 2. This has got some folkier stuff on it. Wink and Blink and Nod, carried by Joni Mitchell. And here we go. Okay, Sanford and Son. So this is an example where they just took some of the best bits from the show and stuck them on an album. So that is what that is. Oh, here's one of my favorite album covers of that era, Laverne and Shirley. So this is an album where they're singing like 50 songs, Chapel of Love, To Do Ron Ron, I'm Walking. So very cool album cover, both so very photogenic. Now, one of the things that they did is they recorded a pilot show for a spin-off of Laverne and Shirley called Lenny and the Squigtones, or Lenny and Squiggy. They were going to get their own show. Never materialized, but they did release this album, Lenny and the Squigtones. Now, Michael McKean was a musician, so occasionally on Laverne and Shirley, they'd be on stage with the guitar doing some comic bit. Usually it was pretty funny. But there you have Lenny and the Squigtones. Twiggy, I think, had a couple albums too, a model from the 60s. So what do you do in the 70s? But, well, he released an album, I guess. Walton's Christmas album, which is just a shade better than the Brady Bunch Christmas album. And we got Sid and Marty Krofft, the Bugaloos. They're in the air and everywhere. So this would be Saturday morning live action stuff. I thought it was a little weird even then. I did watch the Sid and Marty Krofft stuff, but yeah, it could be a little bit off-putting. Yeah, speaking of which, HR Puffin stuff. This was the movie. I think it was a television movie, and Cass Elliot is in it. So this kicked off the show, which was on for like 1 season. Very strange. Virtually unwatchable nowadays. Oh, here we got something that should have been closer to my Sesame Street records. The Electric Company. This was the hip, cooler version of Sesame Street. Morgan Freeman was in the cast, as was Rita Moreno. 2 pretty big names. Oh yeah, here she is right here. Space 1999, the exciting new hit TV series. Yeah, this was before Star Wars. This is, I think, 75, shot in Britain, I believe. So these are just stories from the show. Oh, that Star Wars stuff really took hold, and we're given things like Battlestar Galactica. This is just like instrumental music, theme song and such. Dukes of Hazzard, Waylon Jennings. This is, I think, 1980, actually. This was started in the 78-79 season, but this was, you know, cut-off jeans and fast cars. What more could a 13-year-old want? Here's an interesting one. A Year at the Top, Greg and Paul. This is Greg Evigan and Paul Schaefer. Now, I believe this was from a television show. I've never seen it. But Greg Evigan then, after this, went on to do BJ and the Bear, and obviously Paul Schaefer joined Letterman. Rockford File fans out there? The Angel Sings. Stuart Margolin. He, talented man. Writer, director, actor, singer. Good old Angel. And here we got John Travolta. So this is right around, I think right when Welcome Back Kotter hits, Boy in the Plastic Bubble, that period, this is 76, but this is, I think, his first album. Now this one I just picked up. I don't hate to admit it either. I'm not ashamed. This I was at a record show earlier in the summer, and Jeff Conaway of Taxi did this album. And this is 1979. I didn't know he did an album. And I actually played it, and it wasn't that bad. I mean, the production is really, really good. I mean, it's very disco, yes, but I was expecting the worst, and I got, well, mediocrity, I guess. Okay, hi guys, Ted Knight, Mary Tyler Moore Show. Yeah, good old Ted Knight. Emergency, Great Adventure. So these are just exciting stories from the show, featuring, I guess, Gage and DeSoto. That's why I brought this. I had this kind of top of the box, so I brought that out to share with you guys. Here we got Gabe Kaplan. Has this got the Up Your Nose with the Rubber Hose? Is that what this is? No, it does not. Yeah, Gabe Kaplan, boy, another show virtually unwatchable, but it was a hit. Who would have thought it? Who would have thunk it? Okay, All in the Family. Much like the Sanford & Son, these are bits from the first season. And these are some really good bits, actually. And it was popular enough that they did an album, too. The second album. And that was popular enough that Carroll O'Connor got his own solo album. Gatefold, look at this. Singing the old standards, I guess. And if you don't like old standards, like a little more country western, we have Dennis Weaver for you here. Another very lavish packaging here. Let's see what songs we got here, Dennis. Ode to a Critter. Where Have the Wild Blackberries Gone? I'd rather be with you than anyone. All right. So that is my first stack. So let's bring this one around here. Keep going. So one of the things that you see a lot in the 70s, aside from the television personalities, you had a lot of comedians doing albums. Like we saw this in the 60s, early 60s, you had Bob Newhart and Jonathan Winters, and eventually later 60s, obviously Bill Cosby and George Carlin. Well, in the 70s, it kept moving, and the first show, one of the early shows I remember was the Flip Wilson Show. So he had several albums. This is one of his famous skits, dresses up like a woman. Geraldine gets her own album. And then you got Cheech and Chong. Man, Cheech and Chong was also pretty big. I don't know if this is the first album or not. It's the only one I've got by them. And we, of course, got Saturday Night Live. This is a good album. And I used to listen to this a little bit from the first season. Here we have Red Fox. Now, Red Fox had been around a long time and was on that Chitlin circuit doing very blue comedy back in the day. And he continued to do that through the 70s. In the 60s, he had a string of albums that were like privately pressed. So there was almost like bootleg quality, but that's what was available because I think he was so blue. Well, in the 70s, they didn't care as much. So he was releasing albums into the 70s. Obviously, he was at the height of his popularity. Red Fox Live in Las Vegas. And of course, you got Richard Pryor, Rated X. Robin Williams, my buddy Dan, had this one. This is one that was pretty popular amongst even younger kids. Somehow we got our hands on it, and a little bit racy, but very funny. Robin Williams is one of those guys at the time was just new and incredible. Gilda Radner, live from New York. So a lot of the Saturday Night Live people got all kinds of deals and then went into films, obviously. Here's Lily Tomlin, an earlier. This one is from the early 70s, 72. And here she is here, Modern Scream. We got National Lampoon. And we got Steve Martin. He had a bunch of albums. I forgot what broke him. He just started I guess, working it on stage and performing. And then he had the big King Tut hit single, which was on this record. My buddy Dan had this album, or he had the single. So that was big at the sleepover parties at the time. Let's Get Small. This followed that album. And he had albums into the 80s until his film career took off. LaWanda Page. So this is another alum from Sanford and Son. And she was one of the cast that Red Fox brought with him to the show. There were other actors he was tight with. And she also did very blue humor. And she had a couple albums too. So good old Aunt Esther. One of my favorite characters on 70s television. And we got Jimmy Walker, Dynamite. So Jimmy Walker was already a little bit older when he got the role on Good Times. I think he was pushing 30 years old. So he had been doing stand-up in the 60s. And this became one of the many catchphrases in the 70s. Here we got some Bill Cosby. He had to switch gears in the 70s, and he, in fact, did some singing. Like this is Disco Bill, Let's Boogie. And here we got Laugh-In. This is, I think, the second album. So we had seen Goldie Hawn earlier. Another person that got an album deal after Laugh-In was Teresa Graves. Don't know how she did it. This is on the Don Kirshner's label, Kirshner. She then got a role, the lead in the TV show Get Christy Love. That was a one-season, like, cop show. I think she was an undercover cop. All right, we're going to wind up this segment with a couple more smaller stack here, and this is the soundtracks I've got from the 70s, which I don't have a ton, but you will know most of these. Of course, in the 70s, well, really through prior to the Big Chill, in the days when they actually created original music for soundtrack scores, you got some really excellent music. Joplin, music of Scott Joplin, The Sting. Everybody had that one. Big, huge album, or film as well. The Way We Were, Barbra Streisand. Bill Murray's Meatballs. So a lot of these Saturday Night Live alums really hit pay dirt with their film careers and their comedies. That was another one. Joyride. Okay, this is music by the Electric Light Orchestra and Barry Mann. This features Melanie Griffith, Desi Arnaz Jr., Robert Carradine, and Lockhart. Okay, this is Melanie Griffith down here. Love Story. Ally McGraw, Ryan O'Neal. Oh, I forgot about this one. The Owl and the Pussycat, Barbra Streisand, George Segal. From the screenplay by Buck Henry. Music performed by Blood, Sweat, and Tears. So this is, always like the outfit here. Yeah, Barbara. Smokey and the Bandit 2. I don't have Smokey and the Bandit 1. This I bought in a record store. It says, Best Wishes the Bandit. So I have no idea who signed that. Could it be Burt Reynolds? Yeah, maybe. I bought it for 50 cents. So who knows? The Main Event, more Streisand, Ryan O'Neal. Yeah, she was huge. I mean, she really conquered everything. Star Wars. This was another one that I didn't have as a kid. This I got later on, but just good orchestral music. You know, was very contemporary. Return of the Jedi, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You know, we just couldn't get enough sci-fi music. Here's Jesus of Nazareth. This was from the miniseries from '77, and this is a little harder to find, but very good soundtrack as well. Rocky. So the days when you had soundtracks that would yield a #1 hit single, like Rocky, theme from Rocky. Rocky Horror. Yeah, this is one that's still selling today. A chorus line. This is still sealed. Never opened it. I was, this is about maybe 15 years ago, maybe more. I was at Half Price Books, and they were having a blowout sale, 10 cents for every album. I came out of there with I spent $6, so I got 60 albums. This was one of them. Some of these soundtracks were some of these, and I got them so cheap I couldn't pass them up. I think including both of these, Jesus Christ Superstar from the soundtrack film, and then from the Broadway musical. This is a box set. 2013, Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks. Stop the Engines. Here we have Julie Andrews and Carol Burnett at the Lincoln Center. Clockwork Orange, Kubrick. On a Clear Day You Can See Forever, Barbra Streisand. Again, and you have Montand. Here's more Carol Burnett. This might be from the late 60s. Martha Raye and Carol Burnett together again for the first time. This is also still sealed. Never was able to bring myself to open that one. Here's Foxy Brown. Very good soundtrack. Some of these blaxploitation soundtracks are actually pretty funky. Some good funk. You got Deliverance, Dueling Banjos. Eric Weisberg and, yeah, Steve Mandel. Yeah, Steve Mandel. Pretty Baby. This is, what's her name? I gotta cheat. Brooke Shields. Keith Carradine and Susan Sarandon are also in this movie. I've never seen it. Okay, Godspell is a big hit. Late 60s, early 70s. This is, I think, 72 when this came out. And we've got Cabaret with Liza. I always like this album cover. Just why I keep it in plastic, I guess. Nadia's Theme. So this is, I grew up with this 8-track in the house, and this was the Saturday morning cleaning tape that my mother would put on. And just beautiful songs. Chuck Mangione's also on here. Pablo Cruz. But the title track, Nadia's Theme, which is also the theme from The Young and the Restless, beautiful, beautiful song. And this is 1976. I take it back. It's, yeah, 76. So this is right after, you know, the Olympics and everything when Comaneci was huge. And we've got Goldie Hawn again, Chevy Chase, and Foul Play. This features Copacabana by Barry Manilow. The Happy Couple. The Blues Brothers. So yeah, this was one of those things that all teenage boys were getting into. Aykroyd and Belushi. And finally, we have Benji. And good old Bogey back here cannot enjoy this because Bogey's asleep. So anyway, that is my first stack of 70s albums. And I always bought a lot of this kind of stuff because when I had 70s parties, they seemed to get the most, they were just, people like to pick them up and talk about them, and they're such novelty items. There's not a ton of great music here, but some is actually a lot of fun. And, you know, I'd like to bring these out just to go through them every once in a while, just to reminisce a little bit about my childhood, because I did not really grow up in the 60s, but I grew up in the 70s. So I thought I would give you guys a little something lighthearted but for the new year here. And if you're looking to do something New Year's Eve, one thing I do have, and I did this last year, is a compilation of 100 different television theme show songs from the 70s. So that's on the link below. That's on a podcast I did. So if you're out at a New Year's Eve party and the party starts to drag a little bit, just put this on. It'll pick the party right up. So thank you for watching. I'll be back with parts 2 and maybe parts 3 if I need them. And we'll look at the rest of my 70s stuff. It's pretty much the usual stuff, nothing too obscure, but lots of fun stuff and basically what we come to know as classic rock, and it's classic for a reason. So thank you for watching. Pop goes the 60s.